Hello, so it's 4 o'clock, so I'm going to get started. Just a few housekeeping items before I get started. You can see on my main screen here that I have my Creative Commons information listed there. So feel free to share or adapt this material however you wish, but you must give credit and provide a link to the licenses and indicate if any changes were made, and if material must not be used for commercial purposes. I've also turned the closed captioning on, so you should be able to see that as well on the screen. If you have any other accessibility needs, please reach out to me so that way I can include that in the future for my future presentations. I want to encourage a safe space for learning and or any discussions that we may have. So we may come from different walks of life or have different views of opinions, but there's always a kind way to have these conversations so that everyone feels included and welcome. And we're all here for one goal, and that is to learn. So hello, everyone. Thank you for watching my presentation today on Microsoft Teams, otherwise known as MS Teams. My name is Stephanie Haddon, and my pronouns are she and her. And I'm currently a workplace instructor at WorkSafe BC. I work in our Learning and Development Services department, and I have a few courses that I teach, and I onboard new staff into specific roles. I started the PID program last summer, and I'm almost halfway done, and I'm really enjoying it so far. I currently live in Ladner, BC with my husband and our 2-year-old Australian Shepherd named Comet, and he keeps us very busy. I don't have any other participants today, so I'm going to skip the audience introductions for now. So before we get started, I would like to first acknowledge that I'm privileged today to be on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples, including the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Tsawwassen nations. I also acknowledge that you may be watching a copy of this presentation in the future, and you may be in another area of the province and today, and I acknowledge those lands and those caretakers as well. This will be the agenda for my presentation today. I will do a brief overview of what Microsoft Teams is in case anyone is not super familiar with it. And then I'll discuss some of the more technical aspects of the application that you can use as a communication tool, but also as an online teaching tool. I'll also be explaining this by doing a live demo of the actual application itself. I'll talk about some of the best practices and tips and tricks that I've learned along the way. And then at the end, I will not be having a live Q&A, but if you have any questions for me, I will have my contact in the last slide, so you can reach out to me that way. So there's so many amazing capabilities built into Microsoft Teams, and I'm excited today to show you just a few of them. So what is Microsoft Teams? I get this question a lot. It's usually from people who have never used it or they use Zoom as their workplace main communication platform. So Microsoft Teams first launched back in 2016, 2017, although I would say in the more recent years, the application has really expanded its capabilities. Prior to the pandemic, WorkSafe BC, like many companies, were using Skype for Business for their online communication tool. However, we quickly moved over to the Microsoft Teams platform once we were working from home indefinitely in March of 2020. So Microsoft Teams is a cloud-based collaboration software system, and it's part of the Microsoft 365 and Office 365 applications. And I would say the fundamental capabilities of Microsoft Teams consists of instant messaging via the chat, calling both internally within your workplace or calling externally. Video meetings and file sharing is also commonly used. So essentially, businesses of all sizes really can utilize MS Teams for whatever best fits their company needs. So now I'm going to be talking about some of the more basic kind of fundamental basic features by demoing my Workplace's Microsoft Teams app. And then I'll move into how I actually use MS Teams to run my virtual classrooms. So since November of 2020, I have run all my classes strictly on Microsoft Teams, all virtual. These classes they used to be in person and now they're strictly online. So I've gone through a lot of trial and errors in the last few years. So I want to make sure that I create a positive learning training experience for my learners. So I'm going to share some of those tips and tricks with you as well. So in a moment, I will be sharing my Microsoft Teams application on the screen. So you should be able to see it on the screen there now. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is the kind of left navigation bar here. So you can see that I've got different icons available here. You can move the icons if you wish, up and down, kind of whatever order you want to have them in. You can also add extra apps or different icons as well, whatever ones that you utilize, you can kind of pin them to your little navigation bar here. So the first thing I'll talk about now is the chat. So the chat is all listed here. So these are all conversations that I currently have on the go here. You can see that this is one chat here from somebody that works in IT. They sent me help desk just so that I have their contact. If I was having any IT issues, I could contact them. So in this chat here, you can type a message at the bottom. There's also a bunch of icons at the bottom of the screen that you can explore, and I'll talk about the more common ones right now. This little A here is kind of just like changing your font or changing kind of anything else up here, like bold, underline, anything up there. This urgent one is a little bit of a newer thing that's been added to Microsoft Teams. So everything will be defaulted to standard. Someone will get a standard message from you. However, if you wanted to put it as important or urgent, so it notifies them more frequently about your message, you could do that as well. You can attach files down here. You can send emojis, GIFs, stickers. So those are all things that you can send in the chat here. And you can also do a video call if you want to call them right away, or just kind of a regular phone call with them. You can also add extra people to the conversation. You can pop out the conversation. So there's lots that you can do within the actual app itself. In the chat. The next icon that I'm going to go over now is the calls. So calls is right here for me. So prior to the pandemic, WorkSafe had a separate calling system that we use to answer our calls or have any outgoing calls. However, now it's all built in and it's integrated through Microsoft Teams. So anyone that calls me externally, anyone that I call externally, it would be through Teams, and internally as well. So I can search people in my organization up here, and I can also call them by their last 4-digit local through my team as well here. The next thing you'll notice is that if I get a voicemail, I can click voicemails over here, and it actually leaves a transcription. So if I click into one of these calls right here, these voicemails, I can see the number that they called me from, what time they called me from, as well as what the transcription is. I would say that especially if the person's talking maybe a bit quicker, or they maybe have an accent, or it may be muffled, then it may be a bit more difficult for the transcription to pick up. So I would still encourage you to listen to the message as well, but the transcription is there for you to get the gist of the conversation as well, which is good. Another thing to mention with the calls is you can add people into the calls, so you can have phone conferencing. So we utilize this function when we have to speak to a client where English isn't their first language and we have to call in an interpreter. I can do that by calling my client and then conferencing in an interpreter as well to help us out with the conversation. You can also enable your video, and you can also share your screen in the call if you need to as well. So the next icon here on my list is going to be Teams. So people get really confused about Teams. They're like, isn't Microsoft Teams Teams? And now you're saying there's a team within a team. So it does sound a little bit confusing. However, sometimes you need to kind of work on something separately. And the chat is more for, one-on-one conversations, group conversations, kind of quick hits tasks. However, you would use the Teams little area here, usually for things that aren't short term. So I'm thinking things like, your department has one. So my department has one right here, Learning and Development Services. This is our teams right here, our team area here. Or if you're working on a project is another example, or your company worldwide maybe has its own broadcasting team, which is what we here have at WorkSafe. So if I click into the general broadcast here, this essentially kind of replaced a lot of emails that we used to get. So you can see here, if you look at my screen, it's very interactive. It looks clean. It's very kind of futuristic. You can open up any of the links in here. You can react to things. You can give a thumbs up, a heart, a reply. You can take a look at these, right? So this is kind of any kind of important information gets launched through this team here. So within the team, there's things called channels, and people also get really confused between a team and a channel. So channels are within teams. And the reason that you would create channels within a team, especially for a project. So if I'm on a project and we've created a team area in Microsoft Teams for that, and there may be additional things that we need to do for this project, the different parts to it, maybe you would create a channel for each part, and that way it's organized. So each part has its own channel, and then maybe multiple different people work on different pieces of the project, just to kind of keep everything really organized. You can see here that we have a community of practice here. And then all these different number 1 through 6, these are different channels available because they're different categories, different subjects, if that makes sense here. The next thing I'll talk about is actual meetings. So that would be in the calendar icon here. So if you see here, this was my previous week. So I had a few meetings that were scheduled this week. So I can click into it and join through it this way. It's also attached to my Outlook calendar, so I can attach through it that way as well. If I want a quick on the fly meeting, I can use the Meet Now function. Or if I want to actually pre-schedule a meeting, I can do it through here. There's a few other options with meetings as well. There's something called Teams Lives events, and that's what my workplace uses as well. They can create a Teams Live event that can have up to 10,000 participants at one time. So it works for my place of work because we're a really big organization with people all over the province. So we actually use these Team Live events for our town halls now. So town halls are all now virtual completely, which is really helpful because people can join in from all over the province. And then whoever's organizing the town hall can make customizable features. So that way, the chat is not open until the end, or everyone's mics are muted and their videos are off automatically when they join, just to make sure that the Teams Live event goes smoothly with that number of participants. They have a lot of control how that gets done. We also have a campaign called Mental Health Conversations. So once a month, my workplace brings in an external provider from anywhere in the province, and they conduct kind of like a webinar for us to give us more information regarding mental health topics that we at WorkSafe may be dealing with. So this is bringing in an external client who's then able to give us a presentation through Teams. So one thing to note is that an external person can kind of still come in and join a conversation or join a meeting or conduct a meeting for your workplace, which is really great. So this now brings me into my next kind of piece of this demo is how do I, as an instructor, utilize Microsoft Teams for my classroom. So I'm going to show you now how I would create a virtual classroom meeting. And that's going to be done just through the screen that I'm on right now. So I would click New Meeting here. It will then open up this tab. So in the title, I would put the title of my course. So whatever my course name is, course name, and then the date or the year, and I'd put that there. Then when I get my class list from my admin, I would put all of their names in here, and it would attach to their name in Microsoft Teams and send them an Outlook invite. Then I put the whole time frame for my virtual training class. So if I'm teaching for the month of June and it's one continuous class and it's starting on, let's say June 5th, and it's going until June 30th, I can put the start date. So I want everyone there by 8 a.m. every day, and we're going to be ending at 4 p.m. every day. And I can add any of those Teams channels that I have separate. So I do have one for my training class in that Teams area. So I can put my training channel there if I want to attach that. And then the location will automatically be Microsoft Teams. It'll create a unique link. So that link will go to their Outlook or as well as their Teams calendar. They click that link every single day from June 5th to June 30th, and it brings them to that same spot. And it's a continuous of the classroom. So it picks up kind of where we left off. All the information is saved rather than a new meeting every single day would not be sufficient, because then what if we want to find information from the previous day? It's a different link. So this actually keeps it all concise in one area, which is really helpful. I would then send this off. I'd put in any additional information that I want my learners to know. That way they have the invite and access to the virtual classroom, which is really great. So I'm just going to go back into my chat because this is also where I'll find a history of that. So if I scroll down at the bottom here, I have my February training class that I did. And it was my virtual classroom. So each morning we would log on, video mics on, and it's a very interactive live classroom on the go. The chat is also working on the go as well. So typically we would have a moderator monitoring the chat to assist the instructors with, right? So again, all the same chat functions work, whether that you're in an individual chat one-on-one or if you're in a group chat. I've got a few group chats up here as well where multiple people are allowed to be in the chat. So again, you would join it every day. If you go to files, these are all the different files that I've sent throughout training, right? It's got the date and who sent them, and it goes all the way down. So that way, if a learner wanted to refer back to something or they were away for a day, they can come back in here and find the history of the documents and then have them ready to go. It also takes an attendance for me so I can keep track of who was there every day, because I had 17 people in this class, which is quite a big class for my virtual training sessions. So that way it keeps me in line of who was there and who wasn't there and who needs to be able to catch up. You can do recordings and transcriptions. Another couple of tools that I utilize is a whiteboard. So Whiteboard is an application within Microsoft Teams that you can use in your educational training sessions, where it would mimic a whiteboard that you would see in person. Everyone can kind of draw and write things in real time, and you can utilize that for brainstorming or any of the activities that you would do. There's also virtual breakout rooms, which are awesome, and they've really advanced these as the time has gone on. The person who creates the meeting can control them, so that would be myself as the instructor. You could set up the breakout rooms ahead of time on the fly if you want certain people to be working on certain projects, or you could do random, and it will randomly put people in a group depending how many rooms you want to set up and how many people that you want in them. A new feature as well is a timer. So if I want them to work on it for 20 minutes, I can put a 20-minute timer on it, and that time will go down on their screen in their breakout room. And when they come back and rejoin, then we can continue on with our class discussion. So breakout rooms are also really great. One of the last things I'm going to talk about in this training classroom here, I go back to the chat, is sometimes I just want to gauge kind of how they are with their learning, or if I need to see how much more time do they need with an exercise. If you hit the little dot button here, this shows you all the different apps that are available within Microsoft Teams. So I'm going to click Get More Apps, and you can search for a specific app to see if it's built into here or not, or if there's new apps or popular ones, or if you go down to Education, these are the ones that are used for education as well. So I could create a form. So when you create a form, you can do poll questions, multiple choice questions. You can also use this form to create quizzes. So if I wanted to create a quiz in advance, I could create it, and then it uploads right into Microsoft Teams, and it also creates results for those quizzes in Excel. So it's really great to use if you need to do quizzes, tests, or gauge where people are at. The forms is really helpful. But again, I encourage you to take a look at the apps that are available and see what best fits your online classroom needs, because there's a lot of endless possibilities here with the different apps you can use for yours. Same things apply. You can video call people one-on-one outside of the classroom if you need to, screen sharing, file sharing, that all works as well. Because I had a group of 17, and if someone wanted to, reach out to somebody directly, they can use the control at function